In the heights of Alkofen, Austria, stands a majestic fortress that is a lesser-known witness to the Holocaust, Hartheim Castle. This imposing symbol of Austrian Renaissance hides within its walls a dark history, marked by the horrors of the Third Reich. During the Nazi period, Hartheim became one of the 6 euthanasia centers where an unprecedented act of barbarism took place. Between 1940 and December 1944, under the yoke of National Socialist ideology, people with disabilities were systematically executed here, in the name of the twisted notion of life unworthy. What was once conceived as a sanatorium shelter turned into a nightmare. Treatment rooms gave way to gas chambers, corpse rooms, and an incinerator, instruments of a death machinery that operated with ruthless efficiency. It is estimated that over 30,000 vulnerable lives succumbed in this abyss. Join us in this new installment of military history to delve into the sinister chambers of Schloss Hartheim and its inhumane extermination practices. Let's begin.
Schloss Hartheim im heutigen Bauzustand wurde ungefähr Anfang des 17. Jahrhunderts, also ungefähr um 1610, 1620 errichtet. Es wurde im Stil der Renaissance errichtet.
C'est un château Renaissance. Spécialité, il y a des arcades avec des peintures.
Hartheim Castle, originally a Renaissance hunting lodge, is located 8 miles from Linz in the small village of Alkofen, a rural hamlet near the Danube. The building, with its splendor from the Enlightenment period, contrasts with the dark history that unfolded within its walls. In 1898, it was donated by the Prince of Upper Austria to be a facility intended for people with mental and physical disabilities.
In the year 1896, it was given to a Catholic society, and they had to treat handicapped.
And so for over 40 years, Hartheim Castle became a home for the mentally disabled from the entire region.
During the early decades of the 20th century, the Merciful Sisters of Vincent Nohel ran the institution, but in 1938, after Austria was annexed by Germany, the government's welfare department took control. The spring of 1940 marked a grim turning point for Hartheim. Residents were transferred to other care facilities in the district, and within weeks, the castle was transformed into an extermination center. The nearest city to Hartheim, Linz, was of particular interest to Hitler, where he spent most of his childhood. For the Führer, this was not just his hometown, but a life project. He had grand plans to transform it into a cultural and economic center of the Third Reich. On May 20th, 1940, the first transport of patients arrived at Hartheim. These were the same disabled individuals who had recently been moved to other homes. Between May 20th, 1940 and September 1st, 1941, 18,269 people with special needs were killed there, making it the highest number of victims in a single location during the Action T4 euthanasia program. The T4, short for Tiergartenstrasse 4, was a systematic extermination operation directed by the Nazi regime to eliminate people considered unworthy of living, including those with physical and mental disabilities. These human beings were destined for a gas chamber, disguised as an innocent shower room. This supposed shower had the capacity to accommodate up to 150 people at once, and alongside it, 2 crematoriums were built, one within the confines of the castle and another in the courtyard, where flames consumed the remains of those deemed unworthy. The pompous and Renaissance architecture of the castle contrasted with the atrocities committed there. The upper floors of Hartheim housed offices and accommodations for staff, while the ground floor surrounding the inner courtyard was dedicated to extermination facilities. Although the castle was not officially a sub-camp of Austria's Mauthausen concentration camp, it played a significant role in the T4 euthanasia program. Responsibility fell under the Charitable Foundation for Institutional Care and Cure, which reported to Gauleiter August I. Gruber, a feared Nazi official in charge of Austria's annexation to Germany. After the completion of the T4, the killings continued in a decentralized manner under the name Action 14F13, established in the spring of 1941 and persisted until December 1944. By that year, at least another 9,000 lives were tragically lost within the castle. Among the victims, exceeding 30,000 souls, were mentally ill, physically and cognitively disabled individuals, children with growth problems, as well as prisoners from concentration camps. On the west side of the castle, a wooden annex was discreetly erected, specifically designed to clandestinely receive victims, avoiding any unwanted attention. During the fateful May of 1940, the first 633 people forcefully arrived and were led to death by gas. 4 drivers, in charge of the organization's robust buses, transported the victims to Hartheim Castle. Even after cremation, if visible bone remnants remained among the ashes, they were reduced to powder in an ominous bone mill. As part of the macabre ritual, at least once a week, a truck departed from Hartheim Castle toward the Danube and Traun rivers, where the ashes were scattered in the water, thus erasing any trace of the horrors perpetrated in that dark fortress. Those same trucks that transported human ashes were the ones that had brought patients a few weeks earlier.
People say we saw that there were people in the bus when they arrived, and the bus was empty when he left.
Vincent Nohel, employed at the Hartheim extermination facility as a laborer, participated in the construction of a cremation oven and later in the gassing and cremation of disabled and sick individuals as part of Action T4 from April 1940. As a member of a work group called Burners, Nohel received an above-average salary, along with bonuses for his silence and a daily ration of brandy. With the arrival of American troops in May 1945, Nohel was arrested and charged with war crimes related to the Mauthausen concentration camp and its subcamps, due to his involvement in the killings at Hartheim. Nohel was one of the 61 defendants in the main Mauthausen trial, where he openly described his work at the castle. Although he attempted to feign mental illness to avoid conviction, an investigative commission found him fully responsible for his actions. He was sentenced to death by hanging and executed in 1947. Nohel's case stands as an Vincent Nohel, employed at the Hartheim extermination facility as a laborer, participated in the construction of a cremation oven and later in the gassing and cremation of disabled and sick individuals as part of Action T4 from April 1940. A fundamental revelation from Nohel's records directly linked the movements of the castle to Dachau. This place was one of the first concentration camps established by the Nazi regime, located near the town of Dachau in Bavaria, Germany. Originally used to imprison political prisoners, it was later expanded to include various categories of people deemed undesirable by the regime. A disturbing fact was that there was the possibility to volunteer to be transferred to a convalescent camp or sanatorium, namely the castle. This offered an illusion of hope for the most desperate prisoners of Dachau, who believed they might receive medical care and better treatment. However, as history reveals, those who registered voluntarily to be transferred to the castle never returned, and their belongings marked with the sender's address as Hartheim simply confirmed their fatal fate. In addition to Dachau prisoners, others were transferred to the castle from extermination centers like Gross-Rosen, Ravensbrück, and Sachsenhausen. All prisoners shared a common fate of fatality. After the end of August 1941, when Hitler ordered the cessation of the euthanasia program that gassed physically disabled and mentally ill people, only concentration camp prisoners were gassed at the T4 extermination institutes. Initially, as mentioned by this historian, the killings were euphemistically referred to as campaigns.
Ces campagnes ne sont pas encore des appels au meurtre. Ce sont des campagnes de sensibilisation.
The population near Hartheim Castle soon became aware of the killings, because after the arrival of the gray buses, a dark cloud always appeared over the castle. The smoke spread over the village, with the smell of burnt flesh and hair, causing some residents to feel physically ill. One of the castle historians refers to the local suspicions in this way.
Of course, people were afraid. Local people spoke about it, but there was something going on, and there was something wrong in the castle. So we knew that there was a meeting in a local restaurant. We said it was top secret area, of course, and they are working up diesel for submarines here, and that's why it smells so ugly.
The fact that many people were taken to the castle but no one came out led to the spread of rumors. To reassure the citizens, the authorities of Hartheim organized community meetings. The villagers were told that the repulsive odors had been caused by the use of contaminated oil. The last gassing, referred to as Campaign 14FO13, at Hartheim occurred on December 11, 1944. Shortly afterward, during the same month and until January 1945, some prisoners transferred from the Mauthausen concentration camp dismantled and removed the gasification facilities. Although most of the documentation was destroyed towards the end of World War II, a U.S. war crimes investigation team discovered a box in the castle containing statistical reports on the number of people killed. These data have served as the basis for modern attempts to establish the number of victims. The murders at Hartheim were not only brutal, but also carried out with a chilling veneer of pseudoscience and medical legitimacy. Thousands of victims' brains were extracted and sent to German doctors for study, under the guise of researching conditions like congenital idiocy. Meanwhile, the ashes of the victims were callously sent to families, along with fake condolence notes attributing their relatives' death to illnesses like pneumonia or pulmonary tuberculosis. The T4 program, as described by the United States Holocaust Memorial Museum, employed deceptive medical terminology, but the intentions of the Führer were clear.
The Führer wanted to prevent them from ever reproducing.
Donc en Allemagne, les handicapés, par dizaines de milliers, voire par centaines de milliers, sont stérilisés de force. Vraiment de force. Souvent sans leur demander leur avis, sans que les familles soient au courant.
To legitimize this war against disabled people, a propaganda campaign was even launched by his minister Joseph Goebbels.
According to a decree by Hitler, doctors were tasked with determining who should receive merciful death. However, this supposed mercy was a facade, as doctors not only determined who would die, but often personally operated the carbon monoxide gas keys used in the killings. In addition to public awareness of the euthanasia program, a critical point was reached when an eloquent Catholic priest intensified his rhetorical attacks against the regime. The influential Clemens August Graf von Galen, Bishop of Münster, earned the nickname Lion of Münster for his sermon denouncing the euthanasia program on August 3, 1941. As the cleric told his parishioners, they were being killed because, according to the judgment of some official body, they had become unworthy of living, classified as unproductive members of the national community. The commandment not to kill, von Galen said, could not be erased by National Socialism, as it was written in the souls of men. Von Galen's sermon was reproduced and circulated throughout Germany, spreading the rumor of what was happening within the Castle of Horror. According to historian Anton Gill, the bishop used his condemnation of this appalling policy to draw broader conclusions about the nature of the Nazi state. Reactions were not long in coming.
Donc face à l'intervention de l'évêque von Galen, eh bien, il y a recul de la hiérarchie nazie qui décide de stopper l'opération T4, c'est-à-dire le meurtre de masse par gazage.
C'est-à-dire, il y a un moment, la centrale de Berlin appelle les centres d'euthanasie pour dire vous arrêtez.
Once the war ended and the U.S. Army arrived at the castle, they found a 39-page accounting book in a safe. The book, now known as the Hartheim Statistics, contains specific information about the T4 killings, produced for internal use. Inside were monthly statistics of the gassings that took place in the 6 extermination centers, referred to in the document as disinfection. There is a page that calculated the elimination of 70,273 people with a life expectancy of 10 years, which would save 141,075,573.80 Reichsmarks in food value. This meticulous summing up of every saved penny is testimony to the Nazi economic priorities that were put before human life. Supposedly, an individual named E. Brandt compiled the book. This employee has never been identified, but the accounting information matches the start and end dates of the killings at Hartheim. The statistics became the basis for the war crimes investigation known as the Charles H. Dameron Report, named in honor of the U.S. Army major. On November 22, 1945, Dameron wrote to his wife, "Do you still have the picture of the castle I sent you in July? Take it out and look at it again. It just seems like a rather old castle that belonged to royalty, doesn't it? But that's not the whole story." Although it is impossible to establish a definitive number of victims, it is estimated that by August 1941, the number of deaths had increased to at least 18,296. After the war, the place was used to accommodate refugees. In 1948, the Upper Austrian Welfare Society took over again, but the situation made it too difficult to care for patients. In 1954, the rooms were temporarily converted into rental apartments, and in 1969, a memorial was installed in the part of the castle used for killing people. The Verein Schloss Hartheim was founded in 1995 with the aim of perpetuating the history of Nazi euthanasia at that location, and a museum was established in 2001. In 2003, the former bus garage outside the building and the part of the gardens where the human remains from the crematoriums were buried were made accessible to the public. The latter now has a tombstone under which the remains of the victims of Nazi euthanasia from Hartheim are buried. As the site has opened to the public and stories have been shared, a crucial step has been taken toward preserving historical truth and preventing such atrocities from happening again. The tombstones now serve as tangible reminders of the lives lost and the horrors inflicted by the regime. That concludes our story. We encourage you to share this video so that more people can learn about the past of Hartheim Castle and the dark circumstances surrounding the atrocities committed during the Nazi era. Thank you very much for staying until the end. We look forward to seeing you in the next episode of Military History.